All right. I'm just going to do this audio only. It's not letting me do anything with video for some reason.
Oh, I hear you.
Yeah, it sucks. I'm sorry. Just going to look at my ugly little skull there.
That works. That works. It's pretty express. You weren't being very expressive. You kept on freezing, so
All right. It looks like it worked this time.
no, it
Holy
works
crap.
good. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. This is Tim, and I seem to have a bad internet connection. I can't really get Hangouts to work lately without just having audio. So we're going to do it audio only. You're probably going to see Ivan Mike over there. We're just going to have a little chat. Just hit me up. So, yeah, why don't you introduce yourself? Introduce your channel.
Oh yeah. Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? That's my channel, Ivanmike1968, and I talk about mostly old school games, I guess, and whatever else whatever else I talk about, I guess. So I'm still trying to figure it out. But I've been doing it for a while. It seems to be popular. So what the hell?
Yeah, you talk a lot about like ways to tinker with rules, things to change and tweak, and you like this little rule from that system and that little rule, and how you're gonna put them all together, which is a rules tinkerer. I'm really into. You know, I like to hunt and seek for different things from different games that I can sort of cobble together and bolt on, make my own little Franken monster game. So yeah, I think we're on the same wavelength there.
Yeah, that was my initial take, and I still do that. I'm still exploring other. The mechanics themselves fascinate me for whatever reason. I'm not sure why, but it was odd because when I returned to gaming, because I took a big hiatus because I had kids in real life and all that stuff going on. When I first, I think I first started going on things like dragonsfoot.org and RPGNet, and I wouldn't go back and look at some of my original posts because I was not a nice guy. In fact, I might ignore some of my original videos, but part of what happened to me was, I came back and I missed a whole bunch of paradigm shifts in gaming, and I was like, what the hell just happened to my hobby? So I played catch up, and I found some things that, that I was nostalgic about that I realized weren't, it was the best try they had at the time, but we've done better. And there were other things that, when I found a new mechanic or idea, I just wanted to take it apart and say, well, how does this work? Does it do what I want it to do? Does it make the game better? Does it make the game worse, etc.? And so I kind of have kept on going on in that direction.
Which is cool. And I think you probably came back when the old school Renaissance started to kick up again, or kick up for the first time, really. And all these little retro clones started coming out. And like you said, I think in one of your last videos, you were pointing at your shelf and like, why am I buying all of these? They're all kind of similar, and yeah, you just showed me like a big section of your shelf that has lots of games. And while I don't have that many OSR games, I definitely have PDFs of just about all the ones you can get, like the free ones with the no art. That seems to be the staple of the OSR community.
Yeah, no, and I have a lot more PDFs than I had books. I just kind of, in fact, I just finally broke down and got Dark Dungeons, which I'll probably never play, but it's just, I'm not going to find a rule cyclopedia at a tag sale more than likely. So that's pretty darn close.
Oh yeah, I managed to find a copy for like $5 of the Rules Cyclopedia at my one of the local gaming stores, and they were like happy to sell it. Like, oh yeah, get this garbage out of here.
Right, yeah.
I'm like, $5? Sure, you want more?
Yeah, exactly.
I was so excited to see it because I've seen so many posts online like, oh, it's like this magical system that's all one book and it's all condensed, and and I've yet to actually play that system, but I was excited to get my hands on a copy.
Yeah, it's cool. And it's funny just because I grew up playing Moldvay Basic, which turned out to be BX, and so that's really like games like Lamentations of the Flame Princess or Basic Fantasy Role Playing Game. They're clones of that game. They are not clones of the Rule Cyclopedia because Basic was about that. Like BX is about that thing. The Rule Cyclopedia is this gigantic cereal box of a book.
It seems like there's lots of optional rules in there, and just I guess I've just kind of glanced through it, but you can go all the way up to, is it like 30th level? Is that correct?
36, I think it is.
36? I knew it was pretty high up there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how many times I got a character in the double digits, and it wasn't many. In any system,
I think I tend to prefer like low level play anyway. So
yeah. So that's and I guess lately now, like I've been going in more of a direction of just really diving into some other people's channels and something like Anthony's channel, the Runeslinger. That's pretty cool because it's not really about mechanics mostly, although he talks about some games. It's more about gaming philosophy, and that's interesting.
Yeah, I've had a couple people say like, "What is your focus, Tim?" I'm like, you know what? I really don't know. I don't really have one. I'm sort of a generalist and I just sort of blabber at the mouth, and for some reason people keep tuning in. I'm not really sure why. I'm not very flashy. I'm not very shiny. Like you were saying, it's kind of surreal that people actually subscribe to me. I don't really understand. So.
I remember your channel was like one of the ones that was actually out there when I just, you know, I stumbled upon like James, like Tetsubo 57. I stumbled upon his channel and got so mad at one thing he said. I invented my channel just to make a rebuttal video. He's a good guy, but like, but then I was looking around that your channel was one of the other ones out there. And I mean, I had a great point here, and it's going to come back to me because I'm old, so I forget things now.
It's okay.
Yeah, you know. But I finally came to this conclusion not so long ago, and I started saying it. I think I've said it a few times in my videos recently. This is a channel about me, okay? So, you know, and it's about like, you know, my personal journey through the hobby or whatever. So it's not so much. I think back in the day, you know, which the day was only like 4 or 5 years ago. It was more about like, well, this is what I think, and you should think this too. You know, at least that was kind of, you know, a little bit of an undercurrent message. And now it's kind of like, well, Jay, hey, what works for me and what rings true with me and what doesn't, you know?
I think I like the channels that are just kind of like you're saying, just like, this is me, this is what I'm into at the moment. You know, check me out if you want to hear me talk about these things, the games I like. Kind of like the reviews, you know, the reviews that I've done are really just the games that I've played mostly. Sometimes it's just I've read through them. I do like to try to play through games if I'm going to review it. That's why reviews are so difficult. And there's always tons of details. I'm never really sure which ones to include because some people like the ultra in-depth, like hour-long review in a series of videos, and other people like 5 minutes. You know, like, let's read the back of the book and tell me if you like it or not. So,
yeah. Exactly. Like and I always point like, you know, think about like if you want a real good in-depth review, you go to somebody like Talking About Games, and you let you know, because Abraham just like, you know, you sit down and hold on, he's going to go through, but it's cool. And you know, I tend to be more of like a flyby, like here are these high, you know, I don't think it's a formula for me, but it's like here's the high points. Okay, I like this, this, and this. This is what's really cool, and then you know, go buy it or something if you're interested. Yeah.
And Talking About Games, that guy's channel is amazing. Like, I envy people that can do reviews like that. I just, for some reason, I struggle with them. I have to take like copious amounts of notes, and then I have to like chisel them down. Like, do people actually want to hear all this stuff about this one little thing that I took notes about? So, yeah, reviews are difficult. I think the reviews that I most like are the ones that mention the mechanics, how they work, and show you how they work. Like, I've seen some videos like, here's the dice. Here, you roll them on the table. That's what that means. This funky dice over here means this, and yeah, those are the ones that I think are better, the ones that I really enjoy. You can tell they spend a lot of time, too, trying to figure out what to include in the video, what not to. And they seem to hit the high points, like you're saying.
Yeah, I've done that with certain games. You know, I've had to redo a video because I'm like, oh, man, I really missed this, and this was like really the big deal about the game. You know, it's funny, though, that when you say about the mechanics, because I'm really a novice to like the whole D6 system from like West End games, like Star Wars. So I was asking, you know, Francois, like, what's a good one to pick up or something? And then I as soon as I asked him, it was today, I'm flipping around, and I think it was Webhead had a video, probably 4 years old, and demonstrating combat. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that was stupid. I should have just looked at this video.
Yeah, Webhead123, he was one of my favorite channels back in the day, and he was really good, especially with like the Star Wars D6 system. He loved that system. He has a fair amount of videos with that as the topic. But yeah, I need to figure that out and do more reviews or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. If you want like a boost, if you want a bunch of watches, you know, or views of your channel, just do a review, because I did a review on I think it was, I noticed it when I did something, and I was just talking about, hey, BX is cool. Next thing you know, boom, and then I did this review after 4 years again of Lamentations of a Flame Princess, and just kind of why it's cool. And the latest, I think it was a basic fantasy role playing game, and I talked about I got to play with Jeffrey Tulane, who's like the most humble guy in the world, but the guy that wrote this astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers of Hyperborea. And so I do a review of that game, and I'm like, I'm a rock star now. Apparently, I just have to review games, and people watch my channel.
Yeah, I think reviews are fairly popular. I think like you were saying, like philosophy, RPG videos, like how to be a good GM, like right. Video number 1005, like this particular thing. I guess that's what most of my channel is. It's just like, oh, there's this one thing I noticed when I was playing the other day. I don't think I've done a video on that. Okay, here we go. Or I've done video responses to other people, which, I guess they garner some video, some watches from subscribers and so forth. But yeah, reviews are pretty popular. I don't know how popular the chats are, but I really enjoy these too, especially when they're just like, hey, let's talk, hit record, let's see what happens.
Yeah, that is cool too. I mean, to me, still the whole thing is surreal. I mean, like I literally made this, rebuttal video, and it was. I go back and watch it now, and I cringe, like, oh God, it was horrible. But it went as viral as it could in the OSR community, which meant it had several hundred views at the time. And I'm like, all of a sudden I'm making I have this channel, and I'm like, people are actually watching this.
And the amount of videos you have too will just sort of the number that you have will crop up after a while. You're like, wow, how many videos have I recorded so far?
Yeah.
And, it's like, wow, I cringe a lot too. I tend to leave most of my videos up. I think the only ones I took down were the ones that had a lot of copyright things back when I tried to like use music and didn't understand how that worked. And YouTube wasn't very fond of that, so I had to change that up. But yeah, so what are you actually playing these days? Like, what is your game, or what have you cobbled together that you're using?
Right now, to be honest with you, like, I mean, I'm less inclined to do the Frankenstein stuff as opposed to like pick out like one or two mechanics that like I like better. Like, I mean, to be honest with you, now if I go back and look at Lamentations of the Flame Princess, which is something I've got a couple guys. We're waiting for a couple more players to actually start the campaign. But really now, looking back at that, there's nothing I would change about it except maybe the saving throws, because I loved what Swords and Wizardry did with the saving throws, where it's just a number, and if you're a certain class, you're better at it.
They just had the one saving throw, correct?
Yeah, and Astonishing Swordsman does the same thing, and it's one saving throw, and I guess you could do some of that. I guess it's what the hell is it called? Delta or whatever house rules to like OD&D, where okay, you have a base saving throw, and if it's poison, it's easier, and if it's spells, it's harder. So you maybe get a +1 or -1, and then if your class is something, then you get a bonus or negative. But at the end of the day, you're level 1, so your save is 15. You're level 2, your save is 14, etc. I seem
to go back and forth on the idea of saving throws. I kind of like how like 5th edition did it, where it's just they're basically stat rolls, and I kind of like ones that you have like here's 6 different categories of ways you can be better or worse at saving. But then there's like the simplicity of the one saving throw. It's almost like a luck roll, like let's hope you don't die, roll your luck roll,
Yeah.
So.
Other than that, I mean, honestly, I mean, I like the way that game, Lamentations of the Flame Princess is written, period, because it's very familiar to me. It's not just nostalgia, but it was just ultra simple. But every place the game kind of sucked, or not sucked, but the mechanic was a little clunky, he fixed it.
I'm a big fan of his D6 skills that he has in there. Especially, I don't know what it is, just seeing the 6-sider on the character sheet and you get to fill in the pips. I love that. I don't know, maybe it's because I played a lot of World of Darkness, like back in the day, where you fill in little circles. But it looks easy it's easy to figure out. You just look at your character sheet, see what pips are filled in, and that's what you got to roll. So it's very intuitive for new players.
Yeah, that is cool. I mean, I think I might. On the fence, it depends what day you catch me. Whether I'd say let me do D12 and make it more granular, and that's what they did in Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers. And I like to be able to take that die out of the box, because what the hell do you use it for unless you're a barbarian in 1st edition?
That's true. Yeah,
but a 12 is cool. But other than that, I mean, that's really those are the 2 things I probably have on the table to play is another Lamentations campaign, and then another and to maybe put together a campaign for Astonishing Swordsman. And usually I like my own setting, but Tilanian setting is cool enough that I figured I'd like to run one there. And it's even though it's kind of sort of based on 1st edition, it's really not. I love 1st edition, but I don't think I'd ever play it again. And this is not the gigantic monster that 1st edition was too. So
what? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm saying, I mean, in that regard, he also made it there's a big flavor aspect of the game that's cool, but Jeff did all the heavy lifting in terms of like, well, how would you hot rod 1st edition instead of me having to do the hard work, which I used to do. Like, he kind of did all the hard work. I flipped through the game like, this is really cool. All right on.
Have you ever done any videos on your setting? You just said that you have your own setting. Have you ever done anything like that?
He sent me these like maps he made, for his his campaign, and I'm like, dude, you should make maps for me. So he sent me some more pictures.
Mhm.
So I might, I'll see whether I have him make me a map of a local area. But after that, the world really is pretty, I don't want to say vanilla. Like the more I worked on it, the more I wanted to cut out a lot of the fantasy races. So there's not, a lot of goblins running around or all this sort of junk. So, if anything, I use some tropes that are pretty well used, like old sneakers. So if you're a resident of that area, you know that at some point, or at least you've heard as a child, at some point there was something called the Great Race that built great cities and everything, but they're gone. They're long gone. So there are some ruins that people just don't go to. And other than that, there was a race that called the Antha, and if you're a sci-fi fan, you might pick up on that name. It was one little story, but there's a race called the Antha that at one point several hundred years ago just kicked butt, and like everybody paid them tribute, and then one day they just disappeared. And that's what that's what's starting out in the world. And there, some people say they were the same race, and some people say no, they weren't. But after that, things are very it starts out very vanilla in terms of like where you are. You start out in the temperate climate because it's supposed to be fantasy land. You're supposed to start out in something that's like England or something, I think. And so there's a basic barbarians to the north that cause trouble every once in a while. If you go south, it's instant desert Conan type stuff. After that, it's more like we'll find out. And there's not like a million different things going on in every single area. You'd have to actually go there. After that, it's more nation versus nation type stuff. And then the occasional like, oh my God, this cult has just unearthed something horrific.
Well, I've heard a lot of people put down like, oh, it's just vanilla fantasy. It's just but honestly, it's very easy for new players to get into, especially if you're trying to recruit people into your face-to-face group, like because they kind of understand a lot of those tropes, like you're saying, the old sneakers, the things that they're tried and true and they've been worn in the past. But it's interesting. It sounds like your setting is now more human centric, which I guess is more like the AD&D thing. I read through the Dungeon Master's Guide when I was first getting into things. It's like, yeah, try to have more human interaction, and all the creatures are down in the dungeons, or the ruins in your case.
Yeah, and that was that's kind of what I've gravitated more towards over time, because as a kid, we played in Fantasyland and open up the monster manual and everything else, and there was stuff everywhere, and you couldn't walk 10 feet without running into a pixie or a dragon or God knows what, or a friggin' gelatinous cube. Like it was insane. It was and now I don't like having a whole bunch of races running around. What this other race of Antha are, if they ever show up, and of course they show up, dude. If anything, they're more like Melnivonians. If you recall that kind of thing, they're just they'll beat the crap, and they're not really that either. But you don't want to meet one, and then it's a whole thing of what's going on with them. But having like a couple races that are significant besides humans, as opposed to having elves and dwarves and everything else, which is cool, but after a while it gets to be too much of a gets too crazy. Like when I came back to role playing, and we messed around with playing like things other than the basic races. Every once in a while somebody wanted to be like a goblin or something. It's like, oh, okay, that's fine. But when I came back and there's Dragonborn, and I'm like, what the hell is all this crap? And I'm in a party of like 18 different races. I'm like, well, seriously, dude?
I guess it has cool. A different feeling, different flavor than just like the human, halfling, elf, dwarf. Even I guess like the half orc.
Right, and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not knocking that. It's just like that's not the feel I was kind of going for. If anything, I might include halflings, and I'm always whichever day you ask me, I say that you might have some in there, but they're not normal halflings. My shtick for a long time was that maybe people aren't from Earth, and you find out that halflings were genetically altered humans, and it's because to work in the ductwork and the Jeffries tubes of spacecraft, you need small people. And evil.
I think the halflings I've included were more like the Dark Sun halflings, where they're like trying to eat your face, and just to kind of get away from even though I love Tolkien, I just when I game, I can't game in Middle Earth. I don't know what it is. It's got to be probably the closest I can game to Middle Earth is the Dark Sun setting that's put out by Fantasy Flight Games, which is basically like Middle Earth if Sauron won, and it's all dark and depressing, and That's probably the closest I can get to actually role playing in Middle Earth. I played early when I was younger, the Lord of the Rings adventure game from Ice, Role Master and Merp fame, but I never really went on past that. We kind of grew out of that, and it's interesting. I guess as the years go on, our tastes change, our preferences change, and we just want something different. Like I said, you don't want 1,001 creatures in the gaming the party. You want mostly humans and maybe an oddball here and there over the years.
Yeah, that seems to it's happened. Like when I was a kid, I dug all the Lord of the Rings and Narnia. That was my introduction to fantasy and everything. And my dad's responsible for all that. And he had me watch Star Trek reruns. So by the time I was 5, I was reading The Hobbit, and watching Star Trek. But that's kind of how I approached like role playing for a while. It was just big giant Fantasyland thing, and then it was only later, that I kind of, in fact, to be honest with you, now I'm being rambling around, it was when I actually started to read some of the stuff that James Raggi wrote about playing Lamentations of the Flame Princess, where you shouldn't have a bestiary where a monster was like some really unusual thing and that made it special, as opposed to like you encounter a troll and I know this thing has 6 + 6 hit dice and has 3 attacks per round. I already know what's going to happen. Whereas if you're playing a game where it's truly unusual and rare, then it becomes scary and it becomes interesting.
Yeah, those words too kind of hit me. Up to that point, I really thought of every monster as their own species, and I guess sometimes they were a race that could breed with humanity or elves or whatever. But I never really thought about like unique monsters to the extent that James emphasized that. And I liked that the player. See, that's the kind of that's the kind of stuff I do in character. Like when I'm playing, I try to tell GMs ahead of time. It's like I'm gonna do some random stuff, man. I'm gonna try not to as bad as I normally do. Like I try to hold myself back. I'm kind of like a spaz sometimes when I'm a player. I've often said that's probably because I run so many games. It's like I'm so excited to be a player, and then at the same time, I'm like, it's like. When it's not my turn, I don't know what to do with myself. I'm like, wow, I have nothing to do right now. I don't know how to deal with this.
Yeah, usually my MO is to make funny comments and then poke fun at the other players when it's not my turn, which gets annoying.
I found that I tend to be a better player when I'm taking like a journal, like a summary of what happens in the session. That way I have some sort of purpose when it's not my turn. So that seems to help me. I don't know if that'll help you or not, but yeah, I've got a problem. At least I know I have a problem. Try to deal with it.
Right, no, I write stuff down a lot during sessions because, like I said, I'm old and I'll forget. So there are important things like names or what we're supposed to be doing there. What was that? So I write the stuff down. Plus, as a game master too, that was one of the biggest challenges for me running games a lot of times is just making sure I take enough notes, because what the hell just happened?
Yeah. How do you do that? It feels like I literally have to stop what's happening and just look down at this paper. And I always feel like I'm not writing fast enough. Like, just write faster so you can get back to the game. I noticed too that I tend not to take notes because of that. I feel like I'm holding things up or stopping the fun just around this piece of paper. Do you have any tips for me? like how do you take notes during a game? Like, is there some sort of method you use?
The thing that worked the best for me, and of course it's time consuming, unfortunately, is other than like writing a couple notes down during the session, is like as soon as it was over and everybody went home, I typed up what happened to the best of my ability, and I think that
like it was still fresh in your memory, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit of a summary, and occasionally I'd ask, when I was a player in another game, we used to kind of debrief and just somebody would say, okay, I'm going to write a little summary, and then this guy Joe that was playing. And the different Joe was playing I'm trying to remember his specialist name off the top of my head, but he would sit there and write like a little blurb right about the game and email it to all of us, and most would be like, okay, yeah, that's right, but you forgot this one part, because we were doing a lot of political maneuvering in that game. Believe it or not, it was Lamentations of the Flame Princess game, but it was not horror based. We were movers and shakers, and we were just diabolical people, and we all deserved to die anyway. But we kind of like, okay, well, we're all on the same page here. And sometimes Joe, the DM, would say, okay, but there's this one part here we forgot. So sometimes I guess enlisting your players to kind of help you remember like what exactly happened in this session. So I think that me writing down what happened on my own was good, but having that kind of email exchange between the players and the game master, the day after or that subsequent week, really kind of helped congeal what happened. And we got to do some out of game play too. So in other words, if we left off somewhere and we were back at town, we actually played a little bit, in between sessions, like, what do you want, what are you guys doing, that sort of thing, or what kind of machinations do you have going on? So
you mean like just bouncing emails back and forth?
yeah, so it wasn't exactly play by email, although we did a little bit of playing by email. So we were back at a safe location, and what are you guys up to? And my guy would always be doing something with his laboratory, or paying some people off, or doing some political junk. But in that exchange, a big part of that exchange was like, what happened last session? Did we get it all down? So everybody kind of had it fresh in their minds, not just fresh in their minds, but you had a written document that was kind of like a wiki, like a little campaign wiki, and everybody got to correct it a little bit. And, okay, here's what happened. So you could actually go back and look, like, what happened 3 weeks ago. It would be there. So that in my experience, that probably worked the best. But that was a collaborative effort.
I see. Yeah, I have found that it's best when the player takes notes, because they'll catch something like while you're role playing that you just can't take a break. like when I'm in the middle of role playing some NPC that's giving them a hard time, I try to get into it, and my hands are moving all over the place, and I'm pointing at the players, and sometimes I just forget what I say, because a lot of it is just improvisation. I tend to not have as much prep when it comes to that. And players taking notes definitely helps, because my memory's awful. I'll forget all kinds of important details of players the next session, like, yeah, we totally did that already. Don't you remember last session? Like, oh, that's right, sorry.
Yeah, the worst thing that happened to me recently, it was a year ago, but I ran this Swords and Six-Siders game at a con. It was terrible. I was awful. But in the middle of it, there was some troll, and I guess the troll was Timon the troll, because he had been possessed by this very timid spirit, former ruler of the kingdom, and so he was Timon. But at some point, they said, yeah. So Theodore says, like, dude, who's Theodore? The troll. Some other player dutifully written down the name of the troll and interacting with him. I'm like, oh yeah, what's his name? I just written the adventure. That was all.
I'm so bad with names in real life, let alone in a fictitious little NPCs. The only time I'm really good with that is if I jot down the NPC's name on top of a 3x5 card, and I literally just pull that card out while I'm role playing, and I just jot down like personality traits. Like, I just describe this guy as having one eye, so I'll write one eye on it. Or this guy's kind of a jerk to this one character for like no reason at all, and I'll just write that on there. Just so that the next time I pull that card up, I'm like, oh, that's right. This NPC hates this character. I got to remember to, have some consistency there. So I think it makes the world feel more real, I guess, to the players. Like when, like, oh, holy crap, he remembered that this NPC does not like me. Like that kind of sucks at the same time, but it helps with immersion, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually, probably the biggest amount of work I'm doing on my campaign world right now is like the cities, like the few major cities around the area where they're all fleshed out. Like the world events are kind of fleshed out, like what the kind of things are going to be happening as this nation freaks out, or this cult goes bananas and all that stuff. But it might have been Clint Krause. It might have been part of his Damn Good D&D series, or it might have been another video I watched. But the person was talking about like coming up with a list of NPCs, like just a little blurb about each one that are important, and having some kind of random, like maybe there's 20 of them or whatever, and you roll a d20 to find out, like, there's a few of these NPCs that every character knows. And then, so I've done that. I've got like, I probably got more like 40, but like the kind of people from that area, and like, what's their deal? What's their personality? Is this guy good for an info dump? Does this guy know this? And then, so they're real honest to God people, but I have it's written down. So, cause I'll forget, I'll have no clue what's going on.
See, that's the kind of prep that I just love to have, just sitting at the table right there. Like I said, you have the NPCs, you have their goals, and like, well, if the players don't mess with this guy too much, that goal's probably going to happen. Like that's the kind of prep I love to see. Like not so much like the plot hooks and all the changes that you have like ironed out for everything. Just useful tables and NPCs, maybe different groups and what they're gunning for, what they're trying to do, and how they're probably going to get in the way of the player characters, or be annoying to them until they kill them. Stuff like that. I don't. How about prep for you? What kind of prep do you usually do?
Well, this is kind of like I'm doing that, and that helps. I mean, one of the last campaigns I ran. Actually, it was kind of interesting. It was I used another geographically correct area. I started out in Connecticut because that's where we live, and so the game started in Middletown, Connecticut, except it wasn't Middletown. But the entire map, the players were entirely familiar with the map of the world because it mirrored the real world. So Hartford was actually a city. It just happened to be a city sacked by hobgoblins. But so that was part of my prep. But then a lot of my other prep there was there were people that they needed to interact with, and I decided, well, how about there's going to be people that we know, and there was in our circle of friends at the time in the town. So a lot of the NPCs actually had the personalities and mannerisms of the people we actually knew, which is kind of comical. It's not for everybody. It's not the prep I would do every single time. It made my prep easier, I'll tell you that. But we had the arms dealer, was this rather colorful guy, and it's a guy in town that happens to like knives. So it worked.
I've definitely done that in like World of Darkness, like modern games. Like I've
Right.
taken the map from like I've done Pittsburgh and the surrounding areas a lot of times. I actually had a player tell me, it's like, Tim, can we run a vampire game that's not around Pittsburgh, please? Like anywhere. I don't care where. just somewhere that's like we're stuck here all the time. Like we don't travel. Can we travel somewhere in a campaign, please? I said okay.
Yeah, I mean, but it's actually this was fantasy land, and it wasn't really Connecticut, but that's where it started out. So that's kind of entertaining. But that's the big prep for me is I'm probably guilty of under prepping in a lot of cases because I respect the attention to detail a lot of people have had. Like I look at something like Vornheim or I mean I forget what city we were using when Joe was running it, but there was a city that had been sacked, and so he had this supplement. And it was great. Or these giant worlds where everything's something like Empire of the Petal Throne. Everything is just a zillion pages of history and whatnot. And I just don't have that in me. If I have a basic idea, I'm pretty good. And there's a city. It's a city. It's got a wall. There's a king. My prep is more like what events in the world are going to happen. What things have been set in motion that are going to happen, and maybe the players get to influence it. But what are the, I don't want to say central tensions, but I guess that's as good as any. What's going on at this particular point in time, and then in the actual town or area, whatever it is that they start in, then it has to be a little bit more fleshed out. But I'm probably guilty of not prepping enough, like in terms of where they're going to go next. I've stolen a bunch of maps like right off the internet. Like I used to go to Dragon's Foot and steal like little. I don't like big giant dungeons or anything like that. But if I need a temple, I'd look around like, oh, that map looks good. All right, let me, before next week, kind of populate it. And a lot of times it would just be like the players would declare like, what direction are they going next? I'm like, okay, well, I guess I got to figure out what happens, what's over there. I kind of know what's over there, but I need to flesh that area out a little bit. So I guess my prep is more dynamic. Tell me where you're going, and then I'll kind of I'll bring that area of the world or into focus.
Yeah, I tend to really enjoy like very active players that want to just go in different areas and they just tell me what they want to do. I guess over the years maybe I'm getting a little grognardish, but the players that want to be dragged around by the hook in the mouth, I'm really if they're brand new, like I have all the patience in the world. But if they've been a player for a long time, like what do you do, man? Come on, like I need something. Like you're not giving me anything,
Yeah, I like the dynamic groups, and like the group I had in that game that lasted, it was too short. It was my fault, but that's a different story. But we were playing in geographically what was Connecticut. They kept me on my toes. Like I had no clue what's going to happen. Like every game session, I would end and I would write that little summary. I'm thinking, man, what am I going to do next? Because whatever I thought was going to happen did not happen, and it wasn't even a plan. I just kind of figured this is probably what's going to happen. Nope, not even close. And we used to do the same thing to Joe the lawyer. We didn't necessarily mean to throw a monkey wrench into his plans, but we were just like, hey, that looks shiny over there. We're going to go do that. And how about this? Or let's, I was, my wizard, his whole goal in that whole game was I saw that summoning spell in Lamentations of the Flame Princess. I did the math and I realized that I needed human sacrifices. And so how was I going to get enough people in one place to kill them all and summon a demon that I could keep forever? That was going to just be at beck and call. And it's awful, but he was an evil character. And I figured, well, the most helpless people would probably be little orphans and street urchins. And so I gave to all the orphanages. And I was in the town. I was a benefactor of the unfortunate downtrodden children. And my plan was, and everybody knew it, my plan was eventually to get a bunch of them in one area and lock the door, and well, we're going to cast a spell now.
Wow.
But, you know,
That's twisted,
you know,
but I mean, that's cool as far as evil campaigns go, you know.
yeah, I mean, they weren't real people. It really wasn't an evil campaign. I just wasn't a nice guy. I just had a goal. But the thing is that's the kind of a side tangent. But we had all these other political machinations which just kind of happened. And you know, the game master just used to every once in a while, they'll be like, "Well, you just shot this all to hell." Like, I have no idea what to put together. I'm like, "We're sorry, dude." Yeah, I like a game like that. You know, so you know, I think I mentioned in a video recently. You know, part of my problem with over prepping for stuff, and I've done it, is then I want the players to go there, and when they don't, I get a little upset. Like, it's like, well, you know, I kind of hinged this. I'm just guilty of it now, and thinking of a couple hooks for my my upcoming campaign is just there's a few things that I'd really love if they interact with, and part of it's just in the opening adventure, because I think you need to railroad people in the first when the campaign starts. You have to railroad them somewhere. You know, you can't just sit in the tavern until you all grow old and die. There's got to be somebody that hired them, whatever. But then in that
I like to start campaigns like something's happening, like this is happening right now. Like, what do you do about it? You know,
right? And so that's it. But there's a couple cool little hooks, and like I hope they interact with this item, or I hope they follow this one lead here, and so I've got it kind of fleshed out, like what's there. The possibility exists that they may not, and just completely ignore it, miss it, or find it uninteresting. And so I have to be able to live with the idea that what I thought was really cool, they're not going to interact with. And this item or thing or people are still going to do what they do anyway. And I also have to resist the temptation to force it back in their face. Maybe they don't ever find this one magic item. Maybe they don't ever interact with this one guy. And so this one guy may take this magic item and go use it.
And my friends turned out to be like the flakiest people I ever knew, like as far as gaming. Like, they no call no show me like 3 times, like all 6 players. Like, they just all decided they were going to go out and do something else, and they just like individually, and they just didn't tell me, you know. And I learned from that. It's like, wow, okay, so I need to find gamers first and then friends. And it's funny enough that the complete strangers were more dedicated to come to my house once a week than my own friends were. But back then, oh god, I wasn't safe at all. Like, yeah, here's my address. I saw your name on a forum. You were talking about this. You live like 15 minutes away from me. Yeah, come on over to my house. We'll figure it out. Yeah, there's definitely better ways to do that, like meeting a person at like Starbucks or something for 15 minutes and talking about stuff, or just finding like a safe like public area.
Yeah,
something like that first.
Yeah, well, when I play with Joe, Joe the lawyer, we play at this place called Mo. It's like it's a chain, but we played in New Haven, and it's because literally we were coming from all different areas of Connecticut, so we're great. Like everybody had about like a half hour, 45-minute drive, and so it's central. So it was a safe, neutral location. And after a while, like we all trust each other. We go over to somebody's house. Here I've got a couple guys I would absolutely let over my house anytime. But as far as getting the other people, I went and actually gamed with another group, and they were nice people, but I just like, yeah, this is not for me. In terms of just what went on and the personalities, and I'm just looking at. I'm not sure if I want them in my house. Not that I think they'd steal anything, but it's like, yeah, just it wasn't cool. So, there's a couple places around me now. One of them is called the Boardroom, and I forget the name of the other one. And they're board game cafes. And I guess the deal is you pay $5. You can play until the place closes. That's pretty cool. So I think that's kind of a neat option as far as meeting people and kind of feeling them out there. But then there's the other thing. I'm talking to Francois, JDRD30 about stuff, and because I played for the first time in Hangouts with him, and the idea he said that he's met some of the best gamers online. Like, he's never actually met these people, but have been more serious about gaming, or more more quality gamers. He said the quality of players you get online can be better at some point, because they're just more serious about it, and they're you get all your cards on the table. And of course, if they do get a little crazy, well, they're not over your house; they're over their house.
I found that the players that have YouTube channels, I mean, most of my players over the years that I've played with online have had other channels. There's something about the willing to put yourself out there, I think, in front of a video camera, and be willing to get like all kinds of nasty comments down below, or people disagreeing with you. There's something about that. I guess it's a little bit of bravery or something. But yeah, and also, if you're gonna put a YouTube channel about gaming, you're probably pretty serious about it. I mean,
Right.
let's just think about that. Like, you're gonna put yourself out there to talk about games in front of a camera, yeah, you're probably dedicated. You probably have a giant bookshelf full of games, as we see in the background of all these different channels. So, you've probably been playing for years, or you're really excited about it, and you want to learn about it. Like someone like Same Old G, he's very excited when he first started playing. Yeah, there's just something about it. Like I've had great experiences online. Probably the hardest thing for me has been technology. Like, for instance, in this video, I can't even show my face because the Hangouts keep dropping. I just have to upgrade my equipment, and
Right.
yeah. So upgrade my internet connection, because apparently it's gotten worse over the years, which is weird because I used to have no problem doing Hangouts.
Right.
But it is what it is. So
Exactly.
hopefully you can get some more some online gaming going. I'm sure you can find players. Just do what I do. Just invite, figure out who they are, find them on Facebook or something, send them a message. Hey, do you want to do some gaming sometime? Maybe we could play a one shot, see how it goes. Maybe we'll have a campaign or something after that.
Yeah, online, I'm not worried about that. It's the face-to-face thing, because I still, at the end of the day, I still prefer face-to-face. That's where it's the most fun. So, that's.
Do you have any
it.
gaming club out there?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do have
maybe
some.
I'm spoiled, but we have like one that's real close to here, and I find a lot of players that way.
Yeah, we do have some. I mean, that's another of my ideas to convert some people to the dark side. Is they do have some stuff down at this place where it's they play more like Pathfinder or whatever, but apparently they have a lot of people in the game that's really big. And just that's the thing. It's not just talking to players and getting quality players. It's getting people that kind of are into what, or end up liking what you like. And now, of course, it's not just the type of game. It's like with a gaming style. Like, are you more simulationist or all that kind of junk? In these terms, I'm kind of wrapping my head around, because it's true. I've definitely played with some people that were very nice people, but it was very obvious they were more narrative storytelling type people, and we were at odds, so that sort of thing. Or people that are just much more power gamey, and they're great people, they're good gamers, but we were after very different experiences. So by the time you weed through the crazy people and the people that just won't show up, and then the people that are willing to are into maybe playing a game like I would like, and then that are looking for the same kind of experience. We've got two guys, and we're talking to each other. Hey, how you doing? I'm painting more of a bleak picture, but that's probably my biggest struggle right now, is just finding a group of people. And I don't want a lot, because a group over 4 players gets pretty unruly pretty fast.
I've kind of found that, I think, 2 things here. Playing online, I think, made me pickier. Like you said, I really enjoyed the quality of player that I had. So then when I went back to a face-to-face group, I was like, oh wow, there's some bad habits here that didn't really bug me before, and now they're bugging the hell out of me. And I kind of felt ruined, to be honest. Like, oh geez, am I not gonna be able to find a face-to-face game? And so that probably makes me sound like an elitist snob, but so there was that end of things. And then I started running games at a convention, which is open to the public, so you get all kinds, everybody that can show up, and I think that actually made me more flexible. Like, you know what, I can play with these kind of people. I can play with these habits. I just learned that I would just describe the style that I tend to have in the convention blurb, and if people showed up and played, they were getting what was written on the tin, and I think that actually helped me a lot there too. So maybe you just need to go to these gaming clubs and hey, here's the game I like. After you guys play that game, you guys want to come over here, I'll run something for you. Because, GMs tend to be rare. So if you're willing to run something and there's players about, they're more than likely going to plop down the seat, at least give you a shot, maybe a one shot.
Yeah, that's kind of my plan, my MO. My schedule's a little crazy. I actually go into work at 4:00 in the morning. So yeah, that's a bit of a challenge. But yeah, that's pretty much on my plan, to go do. And probably my last parting comment, because I do have to go back to cleaning the house, unfortunately, is it still mystifies me that that aren't as many game masters out there. Like the very first day that I read my Mold 8 basic book in 1981, I'm like, I could do that. I wanted to do it. I wanted to run a game, and it mystifies me why so many people don't want to.
Yeah, I think that's, especially my gaming club and the conventions, I get stuck. Maybe not even stuck, because I do it voluntarily. I run a lot of games, and why don't you stop and play? It's like, well, as I look around, are you going to run a bunch of games? Are you going to run a bunch of games? They're all like, no. It's like, well, if people don't run games, no one's going to come to the convention, because nothing's going to be on the schedule. So I always feel a little bit of pressure there. And I guess in face-to-face games online too, to run games, because, I can, but yeah, I think it's just challenging, and I don't think a lot of people are willing to do that, put in the work, put in that prep time, and that sort of thing. But you're right, it's like, well, why did I become a GM? Well, I read the book, like you're saying, and I decided, well, someone has to run. I might as well be me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but I still like to take a deep breath and play too. That's a lot of fun, because then I don't have to think about much. I think I figure out who my guy is, as opposed to these 57 other people that I can't even remember their freaking names.
Yeah, I need to do that. I need to do that more. I was playing for a while. I've gotten out of the habit. I just haven't. Maybe I should just let myself enjoy being a player. I should just tell myself, you know what, you don't have to run anything. You can play. Maybe I need to just tell myself that.
Yeah, you don't need to carry the hobby on your shoulders. Somebody else will run a game. I promise.
Yeah, my middle name is an Atlas.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's been good talking to you, man.
Yeah, thanks for talking. We'll just wrap up stuff here. Any final words? I don't know.
No, that's it.
That's all
I'm
she
done.
wrote, folks.
I'm out of ideas.
All right, it was nice talking to you, man. We'll see you later.